Welcome back to the workshop. Thank you for joining us again today for another essential skills lesson. What I'm going to be showing you today is how to forge the different sections. Okay, so for today's lesson on forging sections, what we're going to be doing is starting with 180mm of 16mm square bar. And we're going to do a series of set downs, and then we're going to draw out that piece of stock into the next section. So we're going to go from square to rectangular, back to square again, to octagon, and then finally to round bar. And we're going to show you all the tips and tricks along the way of how to do that successfully and end up with a nice hammer finish at the end. Now, forging sections is what separates us from world fabricators, and it's really important, essential skill to learn the fundamentals of how to do this nicely. Once we've done this, we can move on to doing things like forging tongs and other exciting bits and pieces. So let's get on with this. Okay, so as I said, we're going to be starting out with 180mm of 16mm square bar. This is another one of the apprentice pieces that the city and guilds in the UK run, and so it's another one that you can forge as part of your exam process. So what I need to do first is to mark it at 3 inches from one end. I'll just put a little chalk mark on there. I'm going to get my centre punch, and I'm going to centre punch nice and close to one edge, so that it actually bulges out one side slightly. So when it's hot, I can see that centre punch mark. That's where we're going to put our very first set down. So what I need now is a pair of 16mm hollow bits. So I've got some hollow bit tongs here that are nicely going to hold on to that square stock, stop it rotating, stop it bouncing around, and allow me to hold it, not burn my fingers. So time for getting it in the fire, getting it warmed up. Now today I am going to be forging on Blacksmiths coke. There is still a little bit of, Welsh steam coal in my fire. But Blacksmiths coke's what we use most of the time, although quality varies. Okay, so step one is to do our first set down. So to do that, I'm going to have my bar at 45 degrees, and I'm going to be hammering aiming for that corner. Right there. There we go. So we've got a notch established. What I can do then is continue to hit it, but slowly start to lift my left hand up. So that my left arm is then parallel, and my piece of stock then is parallel with the anvil. There we are. So there's my set down. So I'm going to straighten that up while I've still got some heat. Take that bend out. It's always best to correct your work before you stick it back in the fire. Correct any niggles. So that way when you come out of the forge for the next heat, you're good to go straight into your next operation. So there's my first set down. Hope you can see that nicely. I've gone in probably about a third of the way. And what I'm going to do now is actually forge this bar down, stretch it out into a rectangular section. I think we're aiming for 16 by 8. And so I'll find some calipers as well while I'm waiting for this to warm back up, and we'll start forging that out. Okay, so we need to start drawing this out. One of the best ways to do that is on the bick of the anvil. I hammer in the same spot every time. I leave my work under the hammer. And what that does, hopefully you can see it, is it knocks in a series of divots, and that helps to stretch out that material. Once I've done a pass over that, or a couple of passes, I then want to knock it back into 16 square, or 16 wide rather. A little bit more. And normally as I'm doing this, I'm hammering in the same place every time, and I'm moving my work underneath my hammer. It just gives me more control. So I'm ready to go back into the forge. I'm going to do another pass on there, and we're going to forge this down a little bit more. I'm trying to avoid this bit close to my set down, because what I don't want to do is damage that transition. So the other way that we can draw material out is to actually use the crossbeam hammer. I have been using my 2 pound. What I am going to do though is change it up to my 2.5 pound hammer, not for the extra weight, but because I've got a broader peen on the back, and that's going to help to draw that material out without leaving such harsh marks. Okay, so now I've done a pass over that, I need to tidy those marks out. Flip it over. That's the majority of them. Keep your anvil nice and clean, that way you help to keep your work clean. Don't want to fill the sides up with scale. And once it gets down to this sort of dark red colour, it's time to go back in the forge, warm it up, and take another pass. Okay, so the other method that I can use for drawing material out is to actually dig in the toe of my hammer and use that as a fuller as well. I'm getting close now though, so I don't want to do too much of that, otherwise I'll overforge it. Okay, we're getting somewhere close. I'm a little bit wide on that face, so I need to put a bit more off. Straighten that up a little. So with my calipers, I am a little bit wide at the back. That's unsurprising. Narrow up there. I'm probably a bit wide in my calipers more to the point. Right, so I need to leave the tip alone now. I'm down to the thickness on the end, but I've got a little bit more material all the way along, and I've probably got about 1.5 mil up by the transition point. That's quite deliberate because it's quite easy to overwork that, and once you've thinned it out, it's very difficult to add that material back. I know some of you at home will be going, well, you can just upset it, but that's time consuming and it's slow and it's not the way forward. You don't want to be correcting problems, you want to do it right the first time. Okay, nice and hot because there's got more material than removed. I want to leave that end alone, so I want to stop short. There we go, that looks pretty good actually. Now it's much easier doing this under the power hammer because you can set a depth stop, draw it all out, and you know it's not going to overforge it. Well, not until it's worn out your depth stop anyway. Okay, that looks pretty good. I know I've got a bend in it, that's an easy one to fix. Happy days. Right, so I am down to 16 by 8 there. We've changed from the 16 to now half its thickness, and I'm pretty happy with that, and we're ready to move on. Okay, so we've drawn that out to length. It doesn't matter how long it is, because that's not important for this bit. But the next one is to put another centre punch mark. There's a bit of a rad on the end of this rule. 2 inches, or 50 mil, from the first set down. So, centre punch, nice big centre punch. Remember, do them nice and close to the edge, and that way you'll be able to find them again. And what I'm going to do now is stick that back in the fire. I'm then going to bring it out. I'm going to drop down again to 45 degrees there, and do a set down, and then draw this out to 8 mil square. Okay, so bar's nice and hot. Down to my centre punch mark. Coming in at 45. Got a good indent there, and now I'm going to carry on hitting that in the same place and lift up. There we are. So I'm now parallel with the anvil. Now it does kick the other piece of stock up, but again that's not really an issue because we're going to be forging that out in a minute anyway. So dress that in a little. And now we want to draw this out. So I'll go back onto the bick for the first pass, and I'll run that under my hammer on there and draw that out a little bit. We're aiming for 8 mil square. Once we've got our 8 mil square, we'll then be going for 8 mil octagon, and then we'll be going for 8 mil round as well on the end. So you're getting all the sections today in one piece of steel. So it's a nice lesson this, it's a nice piece to practice on. Okay, nice and hot. Get that slag off there. There we go. One heat and we're almost there. I'm going to take one more pass just to refine it, actually bring it down to 8mm square. But it doesn't take long to draw that out. Okay, so we'll pass this under the hammer once more. Try and bring that down a little bit. I don't want to overwork the end, so I'm going to leave the end alone. Slight lump just there. My transition is a bit wide, so right, where are we with my calipers? There we go. Okay, so the next stage in this is to go from the 8 square down to 8mm octagon. So I'm going to mark 2 inches from the set down again. There we go. And I'm going to put another centre punch mark there. In the centre this time rather than on the edge. There we go. Now, I'm going to get that back in the forge. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it out on the diamond this time with the corner facing up towards me. And I'm going to run down from that centre punch mark down to the end. We're going to forge all of that stock into an octagon. Once we've done that then, we'll centre punch again halfway along and we'll forge what's remaining into round bar. Right then, so there's my centre punch mark. I haven't gone as hot this time, I've only gone to a bright orange. And I'm going to run my way down on the corners, make sure I don't go beyond my centre punch or not too much. Turn it through 90 degrees and do the same again. Okay, now I'm going to straighten that out, so it always picks up a bend, because unfortunately we're not robots and so we don't hold things at 90 degrees. We very rarely hammer parallel with the anvil either. So I'm going to do it again on these faces. Same on that side. Straighten it again. I'm also trying to avoid twisting the material. It's quite easy to get your angle just a little bit out. You know, even if you're only 5 degrees out, and you can forge a twist into your section. So knowing how to reposition your hammer and reposition your tongs to try and correct that is quite important. And you'll only get that with the more practice that you do. Okay, I'm a little bit warmer than I want it to be. Not a problem. Right, spot my edges. I've actually changed down hammer size as well. I've gone back down to my 2 pounds. Just give me a little bit more control. I'm not changing the section a huge amount here. We're only working on quite small stock now. Touch those 4 original faces again. Alright, and there we go. Straighten that up. Now I've worked completely down into a black heat there, just because I'm trying to refine that surface finish as much as I can. It's still hot, but it's allowed me to get a real nice shine on those surfaces. So the next stage is to now forge half of this to round. So what I'm going to do first is come halfway along, and I'm going to turn it through 22.5 degrees from the 45 that we were working on. So we're going to go from a square to an octagon, and now we're going to go from an octagon to a hexadecagon, 16 sides. Once we've done that, we can then turn it again, take those corners off, and keep doing that until we end up with a completely round section. Now, when you're forging round bar, it's really tempting just to rotate the stock underneath your hammer. But what you tend to end up with is a string of butcher's sausages, because you tend to overwork with just one place. So instead, what you want to do is work the full length of the bar that you're trying to round up, And this is true if you're working on a bit that's 2 meters long or a bit that's 20 mil long. And then get to the end and rotate it a little bit and bring it back. And there we go, guys. We've gone from 16 square, 16 by 8, 8 mil square, 8 mil octagon, down to 8 mil round on the end. And I'm pretty pleased with that. I'm going to give it a wire brush and we'll cool that down. So there we are, guys. There's the finished section. It's really important to learn how to do this well. Will make a massive difference to how your finished products look once you've managed to pick up that skill. That's most of the basic lessons covered. So what I'm going to do now is actually move these on and make them a little bit more complex going forwards. And we're going to start doing some basic tools and some basic products, things like hooks and different bits and pieces like that. So I hope you found that interesting and informative. Remember, you can follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, support us on Patreon as well if you want to help the channel out. And we'll see you here next time in the workshop. Cheers, guys.